Okay. So we should be live. Shulamit, are we live? So hello there, Peter Harrington. How are you?
I'm fine. Hello, Mel. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing really great, and I'm so glad to have you on You've Got Mel. We'll start out with our jingle. Are you ready for the jingle?
I'm as ready as ever.
Here we go. Here we go.
See, oh, sweep you off your feet. We move, we groove, you got Mel. Ease your legs, rest a while. All you gotta do is smile. We're swell, can't you tell? You got Mel. Oh, when the show begins, you better hold on tight. Or before you know it, you'll be high as a kite. Take a break, settle down. We're the only show in town. It's our road, don't you know? You got Mel. Give it up, don't think twice, we're a hurricane on ice. What the hell, give it yell, ring a bell, show and tell. Mademoiselle, give a smell, you got Mel. You've got Mel.
And Mel has Peter. So Peter, let's start out. Talk about yourself for a minute.
Okay. Well, I'm a family man and 30 years plus serial entrepreneur. I left university and started my first business back in 1989. Got married in 1997 on the day Diana was buried, and 2 kids. And I've always been fascinated by high quality education and learning. And over the years of running a variety of different businesses, I've learned that what really matters to me and what really sort of gets me out of bed in the morning is developing the talent that other people have.
Okay, that's wonderful. And the second question we always ask is, are you a Beatles fan?
I would say I'm moderate. I work with someone who's a very keen Beatles fan. But I think their entrepreneurial journey and the way they made it happen and the way they crafted everything in Germany is a fantastic lesson for anybody who is looking to create demand, or in the music industry, a fan base.
And you're also a music lover.
Yes, I would love to be able to play the guitar better, but I was the manager of a band back in the early 90s, and I'm always listening to music, and I've got a new venture in London underway at this very moment in time.
Well, we'll talk about it in a few minutes with your permission.
Of course.
Because I think it's fascinating. But first, let's talk about your SimVenture journey. You're the head of a very, very interesting, unique project. And I'm not even going to define it. I'm going to let you define it.
That's very, very kind. Well, it goes something like this. I've been running businesses for about 10 years. And as a result of starting and growing those, I was being called into universities and schools to talk about that experience. And entrepreneurship was becoming interesting and sexy in the UK around 99, when the government actually had some money. And I remember being called in and to speak to a group of a new entrepreneurship class. It was the first time, and there they were, 80 students. And they said to me as the lecturer sort of sat down, and one of them whispered in the back of my ear, "Pete, you are going to be, the highlight of the course. This is the highlight." And I thought, goodness me, if this is the highlight, then it can't be a great course, because for me, I learned that I'm an activist, and the best way to learn about entrepreneurship and business is to actually do it. And sitting there passively listening to me, regardless of how entertaining I wanted to make it, wasn't ever going to be that great. And so I did some research, started digging around, and found that actually entrepreneurship education back then really was very much sit people down and talk to them. And that doesn't really work. And sort of condensing this story, I realized that what we needed to do was to get people to act and in relative safety. And the answer is a simulation. And if you look at the military industry, aviation, health, they were using simulations and still do very much so to train people because they're risk pursuits. And entrepreneurship is a risk pursuit. So I came to the conclusion that developing a simulation so people could start and run a business was a good idea. And it took 4 years, about £250,000, worked with my brother, and we launched something called SimVenture Classic, our first ever product in 2006. And it just happened to, it went really well, and it was very successful, won a load of awards, and that funded a much bigger SimVenture Evolution online project, which went live in 2016. But it's all about, helping people and developing their talent.
Okay, so I gave it a try, a very brief try, and suddenly I had a bicycle company. Why did I have a bicycle company?
Well, there are two ways you can design a simulation, a business simulation. You know, bearing in mind the cost and resource that you have at your disposal, and you can either choose to go very shallow, but have multiple opportunities, multiple different businesses which the user can go for. But bottom line is then the algorithms and the user experience really isn't that authentic. So you might get orders but not realize why. We took the view that if you're going to really make a difference for people and give them a powerful simulated experience, you've got to go deep with the simulation. So if you're going to get orders, if you're going to win sales, if you are, it's all got to be related to the authentic real world, which is, well, that means doing research and finding out what people want, looking at competitors and understanding what they're offering, finding your niche and then promoting it. And actually, there'll still be probably lead times before you actually get orders. So in order to, the design of that is complex, and therefore sitting more than one type of business over that complex suite of algorithms is not only tough, but it's also very expensive. So at the moment, it has one experience, but we're not trying to teach anybody how to run a bicycle manufacturing company, which, by the way, if you make one bike in a shed, that's a bicycle manufacturing company. So it doesn't, we're not talking about having to have a big factory, but we want to teach people about what's it like starting and dealing with the multiple decisions and the consequences of those, and going to 2, 3, 5, 10 years ahead, and gamifying the learning so it's engaging, but not gamifying it so that it just feels like pushing buttons and a load of fun. The thing about evolution, just like classic, is that failure is far easier than success.
Yeah, no, so I can understand that students love this, because you do have a certain amount of autonomy. You have your bicycle company, but everything else is what you determine. To which age group you're going to market the bicycles, whether you're going to manufacture them in-house, and then what do you need, or you're going to order them, and then you make less money, and what do you do with your resources and your capital and your finances? And so that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's creating that rich environment, because particularly for people, and we work with hundreds of universities, so particularly for young people these days, we don't have $200 million to actually capture their imaginations like the big sort of the game houses do, but we've got to think, how do we actually do it? And it's all about the richness and depth. So we've even got things like morale, staff morale. If you've employed people, go down if you treat them badly, if you don't pay them overtime and you expect them to work, and all of these nuances are very, very important as long as they're authentic. And that is the critical bit. Nothing goes into our simulations unless it's literally suggested by customers. And we worked with SimVenture Evolution. We worked with 9 universities because they kept on testing and working with us. And SimVenture Classic, I think there was an array of enterprise agencies, colleges, schools, universities involved. Because we wanted to develop something that was very much customer oriented. Okay,
so I can see the students going for it. It takes it takes university lectures and turns them into fun and games. How do you onboard the teachers? Teachers and activation energy and having to learn a new system. How does that work?
Well, people do ask us who's our biggest competitor, and they fully expect another simulation company to be named. Our biggest competitor is traditional learning,
Exactly.
by a landslide.
Yeah.
Because generally speaking, that is, tradition has ruled the waves in education almost since the industrial era. And what we may well be, and we are disrupting it, but therefore we now employ a team of academics who all are very active in working with our customers to show them how to use the system. And they realize it's as little as 4 hours invested time, because not only do we show them how easy it is, although they do have to apply themselves, but we have the whole control tower system sitting behind the simulation, which allows them to work with up to 1,000 students in one case, Nottingham Trent University, completely remotely. So in these times, brilliant. And also they can see what they're doing, they can chat and communicate, they can stop them, they can question them, they can ask for them to do assess pieces, they can take the data and assess them quantitatively. There's so much they can do with it. And what typically happens, people who are hesitant and concerned quickly become really quite, amazed with what they can actually do in less time. And instead of academics sitting there spending hours developing PowerPoints and then hours assessing work, they spend their hours with the students and working with them, and the assessment's far less, and the prep, well, we've done that, and that's all provided with the simulation for free. But it is a big issue for us. We have to constantly work at it to help people, step over the cliff. And to be honest, this pandemic has many ills, but one of them is that it has pushed more people towards the value of online learning and teaching.
Yeah, Peter, I'm a little worried about your analogy here. Push them off the cliff. Maybe better to climb the hill.
Maybe you're right. Yes, maybe you're right. But I know there are many times when I've been asked to make decisions. Maybe I've got a rope attached and I'm abseiling. But it's this, look, you're going to be all right, and we'll walk over with you and we'll hold your hand. So yes, I've got the analogy slightly wrong there.
So I like as an educator, I'm really glad that this is working out. And so just before we move on to other things, if the bicycles aren't working out for me, is there a mechanism by which I can change, sell wheelchairs, go into another business, or is that not possible?
Okay, so you can't go into
to pivot.
You can pivot by going into different markets. You can pivot by, as you say, look, we're not going to produce in-house anymore. We're going to contract out and actually reduce our overhead. You can't pivot and for example, suddenly start manufacturing mobile phones. The software doesn't allow you to do that. But you can.
I'm not sure that's a good idea if you have a bicycle company.
No, although racing cars did go into incubators, But
yeah, no.
You can't. So you can have a different type of bike. You can go into different markets. But yes, it does allow you to pivot. And also, one of the key features of evolution is it gives you this either rewind the last quarter or rewind the whole game, because you realize you've completely messed it up. But tutors listening to this thinking, well, I don't want my students rewinding until they get it perfect. I want them to really show me what they know, and failure is a good thing. They're absolutely right. So in the control tower, the tutor can limit to 0 how many rewinds the user gets. So if they say you've got no rewinds, it's basically you've really, really got to think about this all the time. But that's great learning. And so, yeah, all of these things have been built in to aid and advance teaching as well as learning.
So I think, I lost myself for a moment here. Trying to get rid of all these little things that pop up on my screen. Peter, so before we move on, so the back office is immense. All the algorithms into judging your decision-making process. But I personally, I like the going back because most entrepreneurs end up driving their bicycle into a wall.
Yeah.
So this does give you an opportunity to rethink what you've done. Why was I marketing this to 90-year-old paraplegics when I could have been marketing it to 20-year-olds? So I actually think that's really one of the brilliant things about it. But I think it has to come together with teachers who, and I hope you agree with me, who explain this and say this is a game. Part of the problem of entrepreneurs is trying to pick the bicycle in the first place.
Yeah. So a big challenge of entrepreneurship is creating value. In other words, coming up with an idea that is sustainable, that links to your individual interest and passion. And for that reason, we also worked with another company to develop SimVenture Validate. And Validate is all about saying, look, you can have any product that you like, any idea you like, but this is all about validating the quality of your idea, testing it, and ultimately producing a business model canvas. And Validate is very straightforward to use, but it's very powerful because, again, it's online, students can be anywhere, but it's very much tailored to, well, what is your idea? And I think one of the big things I find out entrepreneurship education, and certainly having, I look back now at my first year in business, and I realized I had a wonderful education. Romano, my tutor, was brilliant. But I think I said to myself back then, that education has taught me 1% of what I need to know, because I went in with so many false assumptions as to what business really is. And I think one of the key things of the simulator experience and Validate is to help people get false assumptions out of their heads, because that's where money is lost. People waste time, people make mistakes. And if I could say to anybody who's about to start up, look, genuinely, if you can get rid of, if you can find out what you don't know, you are so much better equipped and more likely to be successful. The problem is two things get in the way. We don't know what we don't know. And unfortunately, particularly among young men, is that we're very proud and we believe, and there'll be people listening maybe, you go, well, it's all right, I'm different and I've got something special and I don't need any help and I'm going to make myself a fortune. And that second voice is a killer.
Right.
And you've got to shut it up and get the advice.
Absolutely.
I should say, sorry, one thing but the simulation's great because people get it wrong, they fail, and that triggers curiosity, and they start asking questions of tutors and trainers to say, I thought this, but it's clearly this. Why? Well, that's a brilliant question, and now we can really start learning.
Absolutely. And yes, George, it's always good to have brakes on your bicycle. Next time you design your bicycle, it's a good thing to have brakes. So Peter, this is a profitable business, SimVenture?
Yeah, that's a for-profit business. Yes.
No, but that's not my question. Has it turned into a good bicycle manufacturer?
Yes, it has. So the basics, it goes something like this. We invested quite a bit of money right at the outset. But we were able to bootstrap it ourselves completely, and we grew it as full shareholders, my brother and myself. We've sold a tiny bit of the business, something like 5% to investors. We put a huge amount into Evolution, which has cost us about £2 million to build in total. But we're still spending more money there. But since launching Evolution, it had its classic curve. So first year after launching Evolution, we lost a load of money, what you'd expect you would. Next year we broke even, and then we started making money. Interestingly, that's when the pandemic comes along.
So just like the bicycles.
Yes.
Is there anything in the software that says, okay, good morning, there's just been a huge earthquake?
Well, one of the big development areas, in fact, it's just been signed off, it was always going to be designed as a modular system, so that it would allow us to put in scenarios, infinite number of scenarios into evolution. So it has different starting points. So things like finance for non-financial managers, the consultant challenge, cash flow crisis. But one of them, probably will be, because we've just said, look, we want to get on with all of this work. Probably one of them might be, I don't know if it's going to be called earthquake, but basically it's, okay, so this has just happened.
Yeah, so it's going to be the SH phenomenon, the shit happens phenomenon.
Absolutely right, yeah. We might call it that, but then again, we may struggle.
So good luck on this wonderful bicycle company. I salute people like you who are trying to make education worldwide more exciting and more valuable, and that's a real feather in your cap. But most of the people who are in education have had an experience as a child. How was your education as a student in the north of England?
Well, it's very interesting that you say you salute me, because if I'm really, really honest, and I can get quite emotional talking about them, because people who made a fundamental difference to your own lives. Well, I was fortunate to have two brilliant teachers in my life. One was
before that, what kind of student were you?
At times a pretty bad one. I rested on my laurels too much. I kind of knew that I was quite sparky, relatively bright, and I think part of the problem was I played a huge amount of chess, and I still do as a kid. And I was pretty good at chess. Let's keep it at that. And I just thought that automatically would transfer to grade.
How good are you at chess? 2200?
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
We never talked about that.
I'm sorry. Of course, you're from Israel. We should have done.
You're a bloody chess master.
I'm just under that. I'm not, because I left chess and then I've come back to it 20 years later. I don't think I'm not going to get to IM level.
We've had the wrong conversation, but we can do this again in a month if you like.
Okay.
Amazing. So you played chess well as a kid, and you ignored your studies, and you had two mentors who changed your life.
Yeah, one. I love the outdoors as well, and there was a guy called Frank Dawson who ran an outdoor centre with his wife Fev, and I was fortunate enough to volunteer there for 12 years. I use those words, fortunate enough to volunteer there. What I learned, and he was an educator giving back, and he was absolutely brilliant. And then my tutor at university, Romano, he was flipping classrooms in the 80s, sat at the back, everything delivered from the back, because we were all doing it. And I talk to him still every week, and he's 87 now and quite frail. But oh my goodness, what he gave to his students was just phenomenal. And I learned the value of hard work and the value of being deeply curious as a result of the way he treated me, which was very, very clever, because he treated everyone differently, but but then again, all the same. And I think knowing those two people is very much part of the reason why I'm so determined for this kind of work I'm doing now to be a success, because without them, I would have never done this.
Amazing. So as we spoke 2 weeks ago, I think that you owe Romano an ebook. About his life. Please put that on your
I will do that.
To-do list, because many children grow up and they don't have one of these mentors, and you had two of them. So
This is true. Very true.
That's some good fortune.
At the right age.
At the right age, at the right time, in the right place.
Yeah.
And now, so let's talk about your new musical venture.
Well, this it kind of sits inside you, and I think this business of wanting to develop the talent that other people have is because I've always been curious and interested in people who can do things I can't. Why can someone play football beautifully and brilliantly and I can't? Why is it that someone can run so quickly Why is it someone can play the guitar? Why is it someone can sing? And whenever I've met these people, and I have 4 great friends from school, and they were all talented. They all went and played national sport. And Adrian, he went to the Olympics and he went to play rugby for England. And how does he do this? And so when I was when I was walking in the London Underground near London Bridge in January, I just heard this voice. It was a busker, and I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. And long story short, I also have a friend who's a producer, and I was able to put them together. And Pete Thomas, who is the guitarist name who I heard and met, I was able to put him into the studio, the production studio, producers, with Ollie, the producer, and they produced Pete's work. And as a result of that, I realized, well, I kind of did that just because I fell in love with his voice. But actually, there's something bigger here. So we are in the business of creating a whole business, which is saying to people who can play well, can sing well, but they just don't know what next. How do they go what next? And it seems to them the only option is to get signed. Well, we didn't get signed when we had the band in the early 90s. And actually, there are many other options now, particularly with the internet, etc. And it's about helping them not to leave their talent behind, but actually progress with it, but know how to generate more income so it can sustain them into their sort of working lives, rather than it just being a hobby between 20 and 30.
Okay, but Peter, this is like a rags to riches story of hearing a busker. You didn't tell me what station it was.
It was London Bridge.
London Bridge. Okay, so now we have a place.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the things I like about London is the music in the tube. But this, there's so many, I would say, millions of musicians who can't make it, including professional ones. So how is this going to work for you?
Okay, so I think the issue here is that people say they can't make it. So what do we mean by make it? Well, we're not trying to make everyone a star, because we're not. But if we can improve people's economic prosperity, so instead of making £10,000 a year through busking and and playing in restaurants and venues, they can make 25,000 because more people buy their music, download it, or they can play more widely or charge more for their money. Then that has to be good. And so the keys to this are, one, we're not just putting their music on a website, but we're going to produce their music. So we obviously got an A&R process.
But Peter, who's going to pay for the music? People,
well,
I released 2 CDs and they're all free. Nobody pays me for my music.
Well, this is true. So the music is free. So this is partly an experiment, but what we're looking to do is to produce their music and make that available, albums available inexpensively, where the earnings off the site, the majority of it goes to the artist. It'll be a social enterprise, so we're not looking to make any profit, just enough to keep the whole thing ticking over. Obviously, this will be promoting, and to venues will be able to contact them directly and be and because they're assured of real good quality. Plus, they may get picked up by people who want to do bigger things, and then of course there's soundtracks for the likes of broadcasting organisations like the BBC. So there's no guaranteed success, but the research we've done to date, and the fact that we're able to start this whole business on a relatively small budget, and that we've already got musicians knocking our door down.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, I'm going to sign up. We don't have subways in Tel Aviv yet, but I'll find a place.
Okay.
I think it's brilliant, and it's a kind of a reverse, like Britain's Got Talent. But you have to go to the underground to find it.
It's right. It's the underground of music. It's a parallel of that. Interestingly, Pete is playing in New York, obviously online, but he's playing in New York tomorrow. And the other side of it as well is that we're going to be hooking this whole site up to London School of Economics and London South Bank University, so they will be running entrepreneurship enterprise courses for musicians, so they become more skilled in their ability to look after and grow their own business, part of which will be through this site.
Peter, you have to level with me. You know, I just met you and I love you, but where, you know, you're an entrepreneur, you're a businessman. Where is the money?
Okay,
somebody's going to pay this guy to listen to his music because he's a busker. Why?
So well, first of all, a friend of mine who has good pockets has said to me that whatever I put in, he'll put in too. So we are putting money into this to get it going. Now, what we're seeking to do is to generate revenue for the artists. Now, as I say, that may not come through music sales. We just don't know yet. But then again, if we're able to say, look, this is what we're doing, this, you know, this money isn't going to a record company and huge profits. You are supporting, this is effectively your, you know, because particularly in the pandemic, you can't put money in a guitar case on the ground. So this is online busking in many ways, but you can have part of the story. You can be part of the story. Now, we don't know whether people will do that, but what they're doing, if they were to put, if let's say an album's £2, we'll say to them 60% of that's going to the artist, and 25% is our overhead, and then £1.50 is in for promotions, but 60% is going to go to the artist. You would gladly throw that kind of money into a guitar case. So it's about winning people's. It's not just winning them over in terms of their minds. It's winning their hearts over too. That let's all help musicians.
Okay, so but you realize that if you were doing this in the universities that use SimVenture, you would fail the course. You do realize that. I just saying.
Yes, I know. I hear what you're saying. I think.
No, Peter, I think it's brilliant. You know, I have my own company, Our Books, which is brilliantly losing money for 6 years, and people say to me, you know, you're teaching entrepreneurship, and you have a company that has, you know, very little chance of succeeding. And I say, okay, but the whole world can write books for free. That's something, right? So, I mean, it's quite the opposite. I'm sending you a big bouquet of flowers. And I'm even going to speak to you offline because I think I have an idea on how this might work. I'm not going to tell the whole world now, but I want to share it with you. Because
Okay.
no, I think what you're doing is brilliant.
Well, I should add that we are looking at getting our first 6 artists, and we are creating the website, and we're talking to a whole range of people in the industry in London. And this is a prototype, you know, lean prototype, and we're testing it. Now, obviously, if it falls flat, doesn't work, it's very much the early stage prototype testing phase. And my livelihood isn't resting on it. Neither is Ollie, the producer. And the worst that will happen is that Rob, who's the other investor, and myself say, we had some fun putting quite a bit of money into a guitar case.
Exactly.
But you know, music's an amazing thing. And I listen to, even now, I listen every day to some of Pete Thomas's tracks. And I get to do that at the moment for free. And that's enough for me. I really love listening to his music.
So, you know, I really like the story. The story is great. And I wish you lots of luck with both ventures. The one that is making money and the one that may never make money, but is doing something wonderful for the heart. and it's been a real joy to interview you. Is there anything that I haven't asked you? What's your favorite chess defense?
Probably Time of Sicilian.
Okay, not that I'm a good chess player, but I read about it. And anything else that we haven't asked you?
I think you've done a fantastic job, and it's been an absolute pleasure being on the show. Thank you, Mel.
Okay, so just say I have a really good idea for the Buster thing. So we'll connect and let's stay in touch. And Peter Harrington, you've got Mel not just today, but anytime you like.
Thank you, Mel. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And don't forget to share this with your community.
Right, I will.
Sim Venture everywhere. Bless you. Great to speak to you.
You too. Okay,
bye-bye.
bye-bye.